It is the middle of winter. The temperature outside has dropped below freezing. You pull a blanket tighter, turn up the heat, and open your delivery app. Dinner will be there in 30 minutes. You do not think about survival, not even for a second. But for almost all of human history, winter was not an inconvenience. It was a sentence, a slow, grinding test that your ancestors had to pass every single year, with no insulation, no grocery stores, no heating systems, and no guarantee they would still be alive when the snow melted. The question is not whether they survived. They did. You are proof of that. The real question is how. And the answer reaches back further than you probably think, past civilizations, past agriculture, past even language itself, into a world so cold and so brutal that the human body and mind were permanently reshaped by it. What your ancestors did to survive winter is not just history. It is still happening inside you right now. Let us go back, far back. Around 1.8 million years ago, your earliest ancestors in the genus Homo began migrating out of Africa. Some moved into Europe, some pushed into Central Asia. These were not comfortable climates. These were places where winter meant temperatures plunging to -20, where snowfall buried the landscape for months, and where the animals that served as food either vanished, hibernated, or became dangerously difficult to hunt. Anthropologist Richard Wrangham of Harvard University has argued that one of the most critical turning points in early human survival was the control of fire. His research suggests that fire was not just used for warmth. It fundamentally restructured human social life. Around a fire, small groups of early humans could extend their active hours into the night, cook food to extract more calories from less material, and create a physical anchor point, a place to return to, a place that held heat, a center of the group. Without fire, winter in northern latitudes was likely unsurvivable for early humans. With it, everything changed. But fire alone was not enough. Think about what your body actually needs to survive extreme cold. It needs calories, a staggering number of them. When ambient temperatures drop, your body burns energy not just to move, but simply to maintain its core temperature. Researchers studying cold weather physiology have found that caloric needs can increase by 30 to 50% in sustained cold conditions. Your body becomes a furnace that cannot be turned off, and that furnace needs fuel. So how did ancient humans feed that furnace? The answer is fat. Not just eating fat, though that was critical, but the strategic accumulation and preservation of fat from every possible source. When a large animal was killed in autumn, nothing was wasted. Not the organs, not the marrow, not the rendered grease scraped from beneath the hide. Ancient peoples consumed the parts of animals that modern Western diets have largely discarded. The liver, the kidneys, the fatty deposits behind the eyes, because those parts carried the densest concentrations of calories and micronutrients available. Archaeologist Olga Soffer, whose decades of research focused on Upper Paleolithic survival in Eastern Europe, documented extensive evidence that ancient humans were strategic about seasonal preparation. Her work showed that storage pits, essentially the world's first refrigerators, dug into the permafrost, were used to cache meat and bone marrow through the coldest months. These were not accidental. They were planned. They required the cognitive ability to think ahead, to trade present effort for future survival. That is not a small thing. Planning for a season you have not yet entered requires a theory of time. It requires you to imagine a future version of yourself who is hungry, cold, and desperate, and to act on behalf of that person today. This kind of thinking, what psychologists call episodic foresight, is one of the markers that separates human cognition from nearly every other species on Earth. Winter may have helped build it. Now consider shelter. Your image of early humans huddling in caves is not entirely wrong, but it is incomplete. Caves were used when available, but they were not evenly distributed across the landscape. Many early human groups lived in areas with no caves at all. What they built instead was extraordinary. In Ukraine, researchers excavated a site at Mezyrich, dating to roughly 15,000 years ago. There, ancient humans had constructed circular shelters using mammoth bones, specifically the large curved skulls and jawbones, as the structural framework. These were not crude piles. They were engineered structures, some reaching nearly 10 meters in diameter, with bone walls that would have supported hides or plant material overhead. Inside these shelters, hearths were found at the center. The entire structure was a heat-trapping wind blocky. This is the pattern that keeps appearing across the archaeological record. Ancient humans did not passively endure their environment. They read it, learned it, and then bent it to their needs using whatever it offered. Clothing is perhaps the most underappreciated element of winter survival. Modern experiments in cold exposure have made it clear that even a relatively fit, well-fed human being will begin to suffer serious hypothermia within hours of exposure to temperatures below zero without adequate covering. The invention of tailored clothing, not just draped hides but sewn, fitted garments that trapped body heat against the skin, was one of the most consequential technological leaps in human history. Genetic research published by researchers including Melissa Toops and colleagues has traced the evolution of body lice, which can only survive in clothing, to roughly 170,000 years ago. This gives us a rough biological timestamp for when humans began wearing clothes consistently enough for a new parasite to evolve and thrive on them. That date aligns with the period when humans were beginning to push into colder climates. The needle, specifically the eyed needle that allowed thread to be pulled through hide and sinew, appears in the archaeological record around 50,000 years ago. When you thread a needle, you are performing a motion with a tool invented by people who had no written language, no metal, and no certainty they would survive the season. They invented precision tailoring out of necessity, and that precision is what let them keep moving north. But survival was never purely physical. The psychological dimension of winter is something the archaeological record hints at in ways that are still being decoded. Long nights, months of cold, the absence of plant food, the constant threat of starvation if a hunt failed. Researchers studying modern hunter-gatherer groups that still experience extreme seasonal variation, including certain groups in Siberia and northern Canada, have found that winter is the season most associated with storytelling, ritual, and what might be called psychological maintenance. When the body cannot move freely, the mind compensates. Stories were told, songs were sung, the dead were remembered. It is not a coincidence that some of the oldest known art in the world appears in the depths of caves, places of darkness and shelter, created during a period when humans were navigating the cold at the edges of their survivable range. The cave paintings at Lascaux, at Altamira, at Chauvet, these were not idle decoration. They were acts of meaning-making under pressure, rituals that held groups together when everything outside was trying to pull them apart. Social cohesion was survival technology. A lone human in the Pleistocene winter did not survive. A group did, and groups only hold together when people trust each other, when there are shared meanings, shared obligations, shared stories. The social rituals of winter, the gathering around a fire, the telling of a story, the ceremony for a person who had died, were not luxuries. They were the infrastructure of survival. Think about your own winters, the holidays that pull families together, the instinct to gather, to share food, to light candles against the dark. These are not random cultural inventions. They are the echoes of something far older, a deep biological and social programming laid down across hundreds of thousands of years of surviving together or not surviving at all. Every winter instinct you have, the urge to nest, to stockpile, to gather with people you love, to slow down, to sit by something warm, those are not modern comforts. They are ancient survival instructions written into your behavior long before anyone thought to write anything down at all. The next time you pull a blanket tighter and open your delivery app, remember, you are not just staying warm. You are the result of every human being who figured out how to stay alive long enough to pass that knowledge forward. They did it without insulation, without grocery stores, without heating systems. They did it with fire and fat and each other. And somehow, impossibly, it worked.